Howdy again everyone, and today is a watershed moment as I'm testing out my first Cine lens. Well, first more seriously intended one anyway, the 7Artisans 85mm T2.0 Spectrum. Cine lenses are focused, no pun intended, on video makers, and they have a few differences from lenses designed just for stills photography. They are virtually always manual focus lenses with standardized designs with geared focus and aperture rings with a long throw and very smooth movements, so you can hook them up easily to whatever video making rig you happen to favor. Their brightness is measured in t-stops rather than f-stops, so you know the exact amount of light actually hitting your sensor, something that can actually be rather variable when measuring in f-stops. In this case, a T2.0 lens is broadly the equivalent of most f1.8 lenses. You'll be getting lovely out of focus backgrounds here and a decent amount of light hitting your sensor. And it can be used on full frame or aps-c sensors. In an ideal world, Cine lenses also have neutral colours which stay the same no matter how bright your aperture is, as well as a decent number of aperture blades. Ideally, they should also have large glass elements to reduce vignetting, and they should have low focus breathing also. And finally, they are virtually always more expensive than normal stills lenses for all the above reasons, not to mention economies of scale. As a more specialist niche product, they'll naturally be a bit more expensive. This one comes in at only $460, which makes it an incredible bargain in the world of professional Cine lenses. So let's take a look at what compromises 7Artisans may or may not have made in order to get this thing to market at such a comparatively low price. I'd like to thank 7Artisans very much for sending me a copy of this lens for evaluation, but as usual, this is a totally independent review. First off, build quality, and this thing feels gorgeous and handles absolutely superbly. We don't seem to be treated to any weather sealing here, which is a shame, but everything else about the fit and finish of this solid metallic chunk of optics feels absolutely dazzling. The aperture ring turns heavily and extremely smoothly. Watch out though for that extra wide gap between T2 and T2.8. Then comes the fabulous focus ring. It turns about 270 degrees, and considering the size of the lens, that means you're getting huge precision here. It too is metallic, geared, and turns wonderfully smoothly. Cine lenses are meant to have low focus breathing and... a bit of a shame there. The image does zoom in and out as you change focus. It's not disastrously bad, but it's a clear compromise in getting a less expensive lens. The lens has no electronic components or contacts with your camera at all, with no image stabilization. The front glass element is nicely recessed, giving a good little built-in metal hood. The filter thread size is a large 82mm. It comes with a fairly thin slip-on metal lens cap, which does at least fit quite securely onto the front. Overall, this lens is big and handles absolutely beautifully, exactly what you would expect from a professional Cine lens, except for that annoying focus breathing, which is definitely a bit of a shame to see. Anyway, let's move on and look at image quality. I'll be testing it out on my Sony a7R III with its 42MP full frame sensor, and this should give us a bit of an idea of how well it would work on an 8K camera, but 4K video will be much more forgiving. At the widest aperture of T2.0, the central image resolution is absolutely spectacular, with very good contrast and nice neutral colours. A touch of purple fringing is visible on the most contrasting edges, but I can tell you now that that goes away as soon as you stop down the aperture just a little. Fantastic. Let's look over in the corners. What a shame, they are soft. This will just barely be good enough for 4K video making, but nothing more, certainly not 8K. I did check the focus in case this was just a curved plane of field, but that didn't seem to be the case here. The corners really are just soft. Stop down to T4 or even T8 for only marginal improvements. Stop down much further to T16 for example, and diffraction just makes the image even softer. So overall, this will not be a good lens for capturing broad establishing shots with corner-to-corner sharpness, but for focusing on just one subject, the lens's incredible central sharpness will work well. and also it has quite consistent colour and contrast across the aperture range, not something to be taken for granted with a lower priced Cine lens, quite frankly. Let's take a look at distortion and vignetting now. The lens projects a little pincushion distortion here. That's desirable for portrait pictures actually, because it makes your subject look a little thinner, but it's still a technical image quality flaw. At T2, the lens produces some noticeable vignetting here with quite dark corners, but stop down to T2.8 or T4 and it quickly goes away. This lens's minimum focus distance of 79cm is very slightly closer than usual for an 85mm lens. At T2.0, while sharpness remains high, contrast unfortunately bottoms out, as you can see. At T2.8, T4 and T5.6, image quality greatly improves, although when shooting close up, purple fringing still seems to be a problem, annoyingly. Let's see how the lens works against bright lights now. It's just a so-so performance. I've seen much worse than this before, but flaring and glaring is pretty visible here, I'm afraid. Let's take a look at the quality of this lens's bokeh now. Overall, it's nice and neutral, no problems here really, and the lens's large front glass element means you'll have few problems with cat's eye shaped bokeh when shooting at bright apertures. Finally, related to bokeh, let's take a look at the lens's longitudinal chromatic aberration. At T2, well, need I say anything at this point? What a mess! At T2.8 and T4, we're still seeing some seriously colourful bokeh highlights, but at T5.6, the problem is finally resolving itself. Overall, well, it might be easy to dismiss this 7Artisans Cine lens as just a halfway Cine lens, and in some ways it kind of is, but it does still have some strengths. It has good contrast, stupendous central sharpness, lovely quality bokeh, low vignetting, and consistent and neutral colours, as well as fantastic build quality. But those halfway issues are still genuine. The focus breathing is very disappointing to see, as well as the soft corner image quality at bright apertures, which will really make itself known in 8K video work and when shooting broad landscape shots. It won't be a common disturbance for video makers, but it is one more thing to have to think about. So it really is a classic example of paying your money and making your choice here. The lens is very affordable, but you'll need to think quite carefully about its compromises and what they might mean for you. I really had to put on my thinking cap for that camera lens review. It was hard enough to keep remembering to say T2.0 instead of F2.0 or whatever. It has a lot of nooks and crannies and image quality issues for me to think about, but at the end of the day, I still really enjoyed handling that Cine lens build quality, and I know there'll be some people out there who'll actually be quite happy with this thing. Anyway, if you find these reviews helpful, then please do support my Patreon page down in the description below, where you can find all kinds of exclusive bonus content that I love putting together for my supporters. Thanks so much, and take care, everyone.